All right, brothers and sisters, familia, let's start off. Happy Earth Day. Folks, happy Earth Day. Let's take a moment to recognize that within the next 10 years, if we are not changing what's happening with our industrial system, the damage to our environment will be irreversible. So let's take a moment to think about how we can lower those carbon footprints and what is it that we can do to help our environment every day, locally, nationally, internationally. My name is Benjamin Ramos. I'm one of the coordinators of the ProLibertad Freedom Campaign. I want to welcome everyone for coming out today. We're going to start with today's activity with some acknowledgements, some gratitude, and what our panel is going to be about today. First, I want to acknowledge that as we speak, there are no Puerto Rican political prisoners, prisoners of war, or prisoners of conscience in jails. Right now, due to Boricua ingenuity, political vision, and tenacity, all of our political prisoners, prisoners of war, and prisoners of conscience are out living their lives. On January 6th of this year, Ana Belén Montes arrived in Puerto Rico and has begun a quiet, private, civilian life. A lot of folks have asked us, how's Ana Belén doing? How can I call her? How can I see her? No, she is preferring to live a quiet, private life. In fact, she has said, if you, instead of seeing me, talking with me, interacting with me, go and support the work to end the blockade against Cuba. So that is what we all should be continuing to do. I also want to acknowledge this is the first forum that ProLibertad has done since the passing of one of our founders, Frank Vergara. In the beginning of the activity, I said I'm one of the coordinators because I'm so used to saying that. I am the coordinator of ProLibertad since Frankie's passing. Frankie was one of the founders of the ProLibertad Freedom Campaign. And for 29 years, he worked on this campaign to educate, organize, and mobilize for the liberation of our political prisoners, the liberation of our country, and to building solidarity, not only within the Boricua community, but in our allied communities. ProLibertad has worked diligently to talk about Mumia, Leonard Peltier, the Black Panthers and Black Liberation Army political prisoners, educating those communities about colonialism in Puerto Rico, our national liberation struggle, and the political prisoners that have resulted because of that national liberation. So it has been a difficult transition. It has not been easy, but Frankie's favorite Mumia quote was, "Don't mourn me, organize." So that's what we're doing. We're organizing. So si la actividad tiene 5 gatos o tiene 5,000, the activity is going forward. We're going to educate and organize and mobilize as much as we can. A little bit of gratitude. Thank you to the People's Forum for hosting us today, providing the technology, the support. The People's Forum is an extraordinary resource. Go to their website, go to the literature table, look at these books. They have events all day. In fact, today, after the event, Bombayo will be here, blessing this space with Afro-Boricua culture and Afro-Boricua affirmation. So if you want to hang out after 3 o'clock, Bombayo will be here. I want to thank our panelists, especially los panelistas que vienen de Puerto Rico. Yanira, Jose, muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros hoy. Thank you for being with us today. I want to thank our live panel. We have the Eds today. We got double Eds. Edwin, Ortiz of Call to Action, and Ed from Barrio Boricua Resistance. We'll talk a little bit about them a little bit later. And thank you all for coming. As per usual, there's a lot of events taking place today. There's a Puerto Rico event, an event on Haiti. There's a Cuba activity. There's all the Earth Day celebrations. So a lot is taking place, and I want to thank all of you for coming here today and having this talk with us. Today's panel is a part of ProLibertad's work plan. For our educational goal for this year, we're going to be organizing a forum similar to this once every season. Today is spring. We're going to have one in the late summer, one in the middle of the fall, and one in early winter. We're going to be looking at spaces in the South Bronx, in Brooklyn, Loisaida, El Barrio. We're going to be moving this around the city. The Boricuas Unidos at Staten Island have been talking to us about going to Staten Island. So if I can brave the ferry, so can you. So we're going to be moving around the city, bringing exposure and education on what's happening in Puerto Rico right now, especially our liberation movement, especially our work against La Junta, Promesa, and all of the privatization taking place on the island. Just to let you know as well, ProLibertad used to have a radio segment called Despierta Boricua on WBAI radio. We no longer have that segment on BAI, but we've turned it into a YouTube series. Last year, we kind of piloted and did about 2 episodes on our YouTube channel. This year, in between the forums, because if you know, it's every season, so there's a couple of months in between where there's nothing, we will be dropping a YouTube segment of Despierta Boricua. Mark your calendars, a month from today, Monday, May 22nd, we're going to have a YouTube dropping about a 15-20 minute segment with folks hopefully from el Movimiento Socialista de Trabajadores, as well as La Ruta de la Verdad. We're going to be talking about the worker struggle and where it's at in May in Puerto Rico. So the months that we don't have a forum, go to our YouTube channel. So folks, make sure go to ProLibertad TV on YouTube. All of our literature, hopefully you guys picked up a literature packet. As you came in, you can see here all of the information. We have our latest newsletter. We have a support letter. There's a QR code. If you want to feel generous and you've got, you know, a couple of extra dollars, click the, scan the code and send something to our account in IFCO. But also YouTube, go on ProLibertad TV. For today's panel, we're going to have Yanira from La Jornada Se Acabaron las Promesas begin. Jose Rivera of el Frente Socialista. Jose will be speaking in Spanish. We have provided everyone a translation of his presentation. It is on your seat. Some of you have been reading it already. That is what Jose will be speaking. Normally, we will do simultaneous translation, but today we are on a limited time frame. So we need folks, again, at 3 o'clock, I'm going to be pushing you guys. You're going to have to get up and go into the common area because Bombayo and some other folks are coming here to rework the stage. So we want to be respectful of time. So we're going to have our panelists speak, and then we're going to have a round of question and answer. You're going to need this mic to ask your question, not make your solidarity statement or your comment. You're going to ask your question so that our panelists, both live and here, will be able to hear you. So folks, without further ado, I got to keep checking that time. It's 1:28. We're going to move on to our panel. Our first panelist, again, nuestra compañera Yanira from La Jornada Se Acabaron las Promesas. Folks, let's clap it up for Yanira.
Thank you, Ben. Good afternoon, everyone. As Ben said, my name is Yanira Arias. I am part of Jornada Se Acabaron las Promesas. I am a volunteer, but also I want to say I am a Salvadoreña. I am from El Salvador. Although I am not Boricua, but I do understand by being part of the solidarity and the fight with the people of Puerto Rico is very important for us. You were for us during the 80s as well, speaking in solidarity against the militarization and the work that was funded in finance, and also the training that the U.S. provided to for the military, so that that killed thousands of my people. So thank you for always being in solidarity with El Salvador. And today, Ben asked me to, and by the way, many of the things that I'm going to say regarding displacement in Puerto Rico are not so different what happened in Central America and El Salvador. So many things are connected. I'm going to start by saying that I was asked to discuss displacement, Puerto Rico, but also some of the measures that La Junta is taking, but not only about the bad things, but also about the resistance, and also about the actions that the local government is taking against people resisting all these violations of human rights and displacement in Puerto Rico. So to start off, on January 17, 2012, the government of Puerto Rico enacted what is known now as Act 22, or called Individual Investors Act. This act was designed precisely to help accelerate the displacement of Puerto Ricans by attracting non-Puerto Rican rich individuals and corporations, or as they describe themselves as high net worth individuals, retirees, investors, digital, nomad. It's just people that is trying to avoid paying taxes or their fair share, or contributing, giving back to society. But this act provides 0% capital gains to these folks after moving to Puerto Rico. And as of January 1st, 2020, this act was, it is combined, it was merged and replaced by Act 60, which brings more benefits to these individuals. Also important to mention that these laws were not only drafted, lobbied by powerful groups. It's not only that it is not necessarily the awful creativity of PNP and PPD parties. It is people with power. They're trying to use political gains and political relationships they have in order to make sure that they can continue to grow their wealth. So, but they need a vehicle, and the vehicles have been for many years, and since in relations to this act is the PNP and PPD parties, the two main ruling to this day parties. But since 2012, these individuals who are now real estate developers, cryptocurrency PIOs, and now big name influencers like Logan and other ladrones living in Puerto Rico have relocated to the island to basically enjoy what the government is giving them by law in tax exemption, and making more money while making it possible for local people to live in their own country. These people receive some of the following benefits: is 100% tax exception, income taxes on all dividends, 100% exemption for Puerto Rico income on all sort of short-term and long-term capital gains. These laws, in addition to these laws, the government of Puerto Rico has tripled the number of construction permits, and by the way, illegal permits across the country, particularly to approve constructions in protected areas and ancestral indigenous lands, and as well privatizing public areas. This has created an increase of Airbnbs and other short-term rental properties, making it difficult for locals to pay rents or even to aspire to buy a house for young Puerto Ricans who are trying to continue to live in the country and buy a house. La Junta has continued to implement its austerity plan by privatizing the distribution and production of energy, continue to attack the budget of the University of Puerto Rico, continue to provide incentives as well to these so-called investors, and to, of course, work in coordination with the local government to make sure that any plan it continue to move forward as directed by La Junta follows directions. It's not only Congress, but those powerful rich people in Wall Street and other corporations. We can also mention that the number of people who continue to migrate from Puerto Rico is not only the 130,000 who left after Maria, but according to the 2020 census, Puerto Rico has lost more population in the past 10 years. And that's not necessarily only related to climate displacement. It has to have a lot with how hard it is for Puerto Ricans to continue to afford living in their own country, and bad wages and bad jobs without benefits. Most of the young people who finish the university at the University of Puerto Rico or any other university are forced to go to the the hospitality industry not being able to work in the professions that they were able to get after graduating from the university. Some of the issues regarding the junta is that they are not only making sure the investors, as they are protecting, get their according to them the money that the Puerto Rican the people of Puerto Rico own them, but also making sure that they continue to privatize public corporations, public institutions, making it hard for Puerto Ricans to live. But there is a lot of resistance in this issue. There are several community conversations in different forms. Actually, today, the community of Rio Piedras is going to get together discussing displacement. There are several demonstrations as well outside of key government offices to send a message to the government of Puerto Rico, but also outside of the La Junta office, so that to letting them know that the people of Puerto Rico understands that they are responsible of the situation in Puerto Rico. In several locations when the people of Puerto Rico demonstrate, closing streets to get the attention not only of the media, but attention of the local, international media, but as well to send a message to the people, to the government. They have been repressed. Several of my colleagues in Jornada, Acabaron, las Promesas have been suffer unjust arrest, and also they have been unjustly denied access to due process or to access to legal counsel at the moment that they have been detained. They have been as well, they have received, they have been injured during the arrest. And of course, there is persecution. There is a long history of Puerto Rico. I don't need to go too much into detail, as Ben just elevated the names of many matriarchas and patriarchas that are now freed, but they were as well, they were persecuted and they were harassed by not only the government of Puerto Rico, but the government of the US. So there is a lot of harassment as well against the people from Puerto Rico who is demonstrating, particularly I'm gonna talk about what's happening with my colleagues in Jornada, Acabaron, las Promesas. They have faced in 2 different occasions unjust arrest, but also they suffer for many weeks, and in some instances a couple of months. They were forced to go to the local courts. They were ready to face and to speak truth and to say that the arrests were unjust and that they were politically motivated, and not really that my colleagues have committed any crime or anything that merit any arrest. So it took time, but also we were very confident that our colleagues should be found without no charges, and that was at the end of that long trial. There were no charges. Charges were dropped by the judges because there was no proof that in reality we were violating the law by demonstrating, by saying that La Junta continued to repress the people of Puerto Rico. It was not a crime saying that the government of Puerto Rico is pushing the Puerto Ricans away, is selling the land, it's giving incentives to rich and powerful people. It's not a crime to say that, but according to the local police, that was the crime. It was because of the obstruction of the streets. They had no basis to get our colleagues arrested. Therefore, the law was by the side to my camaradas in la Jornada se acabaron las promesas. And we understand that we cannot be intimidated by these issues. We need to continue to demonstrate, to denounce. We're ready for May 1st. We have been making sure that everyone goes out. We are putting the word out, encouraging the community to demonstrate on May 1st. that's going to be an important day, not only to put these issues that I have mentioned on the table, but as well to make sure that La Junta, the Puerto Rico government, and all the groups of power in Puerto Rico understand that the resistance is on, and that we're ready to continue to fight until making sure that justice is served by the people of Puerto Rico, and that we are not going to be displaced, and that we're going to make sure La Junta is going to be out of Puerto Rico.
Gracias, Yanira. Folks, let's give it up for Yanira, please. As a quick reminder, our next panelist, Jose Rivera, will be speaking in Spanish. On your seat, there has been provided a translated version of his presentation that he'll be reading today. Me gustaría con mucho honor presentar a nuestro compañero representante del Frente Socialista, José Rivera.
Muchas gracias, Ben. Y saludos a la compañera Yanira y a los demás compañeros del panel y a todas las personas que están en este momento conectados a la transmisión o presentes en el People's Forum. Agradezco a los compañeros de ProLibertad la invitación a participar de este foro. Se nos ha pedido que enfoquemos la participación sobre los temas de gentrificación que viene ocurriendo en Puerto Rico, el desplazamiento de trabajadores, la reubicación forzada y los efectos sobre los trabajadores de las políticas neoliberales promulgadas por la Junta de Supervisión Fiscal, junta impuesta por el Congreso de los Estados Unidos. Antes de entrar de lleno en lo que me propuse transmitirles, quisiera expresar lo siguiente. Las medidas neoliberales que se han impuesto sobre el pueblo de Puerto Rico en general y muy en particular sobre la clase trabajadora puertorriqueña no comenzaron con la Junta de Supervisión Fiscal. La Junta de Supervisión Fiscal llega a Puerto Rico con el objetivo primordial de garantizar que los buitres que tomaron el control de la deuda de Puerto Rico puedan obtener enormes ganancias de una inversión que se hizo de unos bonos chatarra en los cuales ellos invirtieron una ínfima parte de lo que fue su valor en el origen. La Junta vino a cobrar debido principalmente a que las políticas neoliberales que se impusieron en Puerto Rico desde mucho antes provocaron la quiebra financiera de la colonia. Así que es importante tener eso claro, porque muchas veces hablamos con compañeros que no pueden identificar la situación nuestra y relacionarla con el problema fundamental nuestro, que es nuestra situación colonial. Así que con respecto a los temas que estamos tratando, debo comenzar por señalar que no se trata de rumores infundados o eventos exagerados por una u otra persona, ni es la opinión de la compañera Yanira, ni la mía personal, sino que la experiencia que estamos viviendo en Puerto Rico, la inmensa mayoría de los puertorriqueños, con respecto a lo que es la gentrificación. Esto es la sustitución de puertorriqueños y personas de clase trabajadora de otras nacionalidades, principalmente hermanos nuestros provenientes de la República Dominicana, que han convivido con nosotros por muchos años. Esto está ocurriendo a lo largo y ancho del archipiélago puertorriqueño. Lo vivimos de una manera extraordinaria en Vieques, en Culebra, en San Juan, en Dorado, en Rincón, en los pueblos del centro montañoso y alrededor de los embalses que nutren de agua la zona metropolitana. Muy importante tomar conciencia de lo que está ocurriendo acá arriba en la montaña. Cuando digo acá arriba en la montaña, porque yo estoy residiendo en Utuado, estoy viendo de primera mano esta situación que se viene desarrollando y cómo terrenos muy valiosos para el futuro de nuestro país, de la agricultura, que es fundamental para que podamos sobrevivir en esta isla nuestra, se ve seriamente amenazada por estas políticas que están dirigidas a ocupar esos terrenos donde se proyectan realizar inversiones en el campo del turismo y que van a afectar los embalses de agua que nos garantizan la vida en nuestro país. Apuntando hacia eso, acaban de dar a la luz pública la noticia de que se cuenta con un presupuesto de 540 millones de dólares para ampliar la carretera número 10 que transita de norte a sur, atraviesa la isla de un lado al otro, justamente por el medio de lo que es la zona minera de Puerto Rico, que se logró rescatar con la lucha que se dio en la década de fines del 50, los 60 y hasta los 70, y que evitamos, gracias a esa lucha que dieron amplios sectores de nuestro pueblo, que se detuviera lo que era el proyecto de minería a cielo abierto, y que con el desarrollo de esta carretera, obviamente, tiene toda la intención de retomar esos proyectos. Por esa razón, no solamente vemos cómo describía la compañera Yanira la toma de amplios sectores de la zona metropolitana, convirtiendo la vivienda, la escasa vivienda, en productos de turismo, como son los Airbnb, y negándole al puertorriqueño común la posibilidad de tener un sitio donde vivir, porque la construcción de vivienda para personas de bajos ingresos no existe en Puerto Rico. La mayor parte de la juventud que comienza una nueva familia depende de conseguir algún sitio donde vivir alquilado, y esos alquileres ya prácticamente no existen porque están utilizando para otros propósitos. Como parte de ese proceso de sustitución poblacional que hemos señalado, los servicios esenciales a la población como la educación, la salud, la electricidad, el agua, la seguridad pública son relegados a un segundo plano o deteriorados intencionalmente. De esta forma se provoca la emigración de familias enteras, principalmente, como señalamos, jóvenes y mejor preparados. Las estadísticas más recientes reflejan un país con una población envejecida en aumento. Nuestros jóvenes se están yendo en su gran mayoría hacia los Estados Unidos. Lo que estamos viviendo en Puerto Rico refleja claramente la puesta en vigor de un plan bien articulado con el objetivo de tomar control absoluto de nuestros valiosos recursos y ponerlos a la disposición de una élite de millonarios. Les recuerdo las conversaciones del famoso chat del gobernador Ricardo Rosselló y su trulla de tuanes, donde hablaban de lo bonito que se vería un Puerto Rico sin puertorriqueños. O sea, cuando hablamos de un plan que se está ejecutando, no es una mera especulación. Hay base para concluir que esa es una realidad, y lo vemos en el día a día con las situaciones que estamos viviendo. La Junta de Supervisión Fiscal viene desarrollando dicho plan a través de imposición de leyes que despojan a los trabajadores de los sectores públicos y privados de las conquistas logradas con sus luchas laborales. Destacamos el caso específico de los trabajadores del sector eléctrico, del cual yo soy parte, cuya privatización ha sido forzada por el Congreso norteamericano a través de la Junta de Supervisión Fiscal y el consentimiento de los administradores coloniales, tanto del PNP y el PPD, que han estado actuando de mutuo acuerdo en este asunto. La privatización de este servicio esencial y el desmantelamiento de la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica se considera el robo del siglo en Puerto Rico. El pueblo de Puerto Rico ha sido despojado de su principal industria, el motor de su desarrollo en el pasado y el futuro. Una empresa con un potencial enorme, dueña de los principales embalses de agua potable, dueña de la mayor red de fibra óptica en el Caribe, conocida como PrepaNet, y una subsidiaria para la importación y comercialización de gas. Un estudio preparado por el destacado profesor economista José A. Herrero, antes de que se decretase la quiebra de la empresa, valoraba la misma entre 22.000 y 25.000 millones de dólares. La empresa Luma Energy fue creada con el claro propósito de otorgarles el contrato de la administración de la transmisión y distribución de la energía eléctrica. Luego de adjudicado el contrato, se dio a conocer que el mismo se había ampliado para incluir la administración de todas las funciones administrativas, servicio al cliente, la contabilidad, bueno, todo lo que tiene que ver con la administración de la empresa en general. Es importante que nos paremos aquí para hacer algunos señalamientos. Luma Energy no existía. O sea, Luma Energy aparece de la nada. Hay dos compañías que ninguna de las dos, ATCO y la otra que se utilizó para formar Luma, no tienen en su historial la administración de empresas del tamaño de la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica. La Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica de Puerto Rico es la tercera empresa de energía eléctrica en tamaño dentro del territorio de los Estados Unidos. La experiencia de los individuos que componen esta empresa Luma Energy estaba limitada a la administración de sectores dentro de empresas, no una empresa que llevara a cabo todas las funciones de generación, transmisión, distribución, la venta, el cobro de una empresa de electricidad. Esta empresa vino a aprender a Puerto Rico y intentos de hacer algo como lo que hicieron, lo que están pretendiendo hacer ahora en Puerto Rico, resultó en un fracaso en otras localidades, como fue el caso en Perú, de donde tuvieron que salir porque no pudieron llevar a cabo las funciones para las cuales habían sido contratados. O sea que la experiencia que se requiere para trabajar una empresa como esta no existe en Luma. Están en un proceso de aprendizaje y los efectos los hemos estado viviendo en el comienzo fue desastroso. Una serie de explosiones que demostraron sin lugar a dudas que el personal que estaba manejando esta empresa no tenía la preparación para así hacerlo. La llegada de Luma provocó el desplazamiento de alrededor de 3.000 trabajadores que rechazaron ceder sus puestos como empleados públicos para comenzar de cero en la empresa privada. Fueron diversas razones para tal decisión, pero el sistema de retiro de beneficios definidos fue el más determinante. Esta situación se repite al presente con la llegada de la empresa Genera nuevamente. Se crea de la nada, sale del sombrero de un mago una empresa que es creada por una empresa que ya está dando servicios en Puerto Rico con la venta del gas que se está utilizando para algunas de las unidades generatrices de la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica. Y se crea una empresa que va a depender de que los trabajadores que actualmente son empleados de la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica, que son los que operan las centrales que son propiedad de la autoridad, accedan a pasar a esa empresa privada para llevar a cabo esas funciones que están haciendo al presente. La gran mayoría hasta ahora de los trabajadores ha rechazado por las mismas razones y tal vez razones adicionales, como lo hicieron los trabajadores de las áreas de transmisión y distribución, de pasar a una empresa privada, relegando la acumulación que han hecho por largos años trabajando en la empresa, para que al momento en que estos adquieran la edad y los años de servicio los completen, puedan disfrutar de una pensión con unos beneficios definidos. Podemos augurar largas noches y días sin energía eléctrica en Puerto Rico en los próximos meses, y esperamos que la naturaleza no nos castigue tan fuertemente como nos ha castigado en otros años, porque si llega a ocurrir una tormenta significativa, un evento de la naturaleza como hemos vivido en años recientes, el desastre que vamos a estar viviendo con estas compañías, Genera y Luma, en el servicio eléctrico de Puerto Rico, va a ser definitivamente mucho peor de lo que vivimos cuando nos azotó el huracán María. En el caso de los trabajadores de nuestro sistema de pensiones, ustedes supongo que deben estar al tanto de los eventos que han venido ocurriendo últimamente, donde una de las presiones que se ha utilizado para tratar de doblegar el espíritu de lucha de los trabajadores fue el no hacer el pago correspondiente de las aportaciones al sistema de pensiones, para provocar la quiebra del mismo y de esta manera eliminar un beneficio tan importante para los trabajadores, y que de esta forma pues estos accedan a irse a rendir servicio a esa empresa privada que fue rechazado por la gran mayoría de los trabajadores en el caso de Luma, y que aparentemente se está ocurriendo lo mismo con Genera. La Junta ha incumplido la responsabilidad que la ley que la crea bajo la sección 201 le impone, que es procurar que se paguen las aportaciones correspondientes para que el plan de pensiones siga funcionando. Y en este momento estamos en esa batalla con ellos. Hemos logrado que se asignen fondos hasta finalizar este año fiscal, pero el futuro está bastante nebuloso con respecto a que se pueda mantener el sistema funcionando. Nosotros definitivamente estamos rechazando el que sea necesario imponerle un cargo adicional a la factura de la energía eléctrica para cumplir con el pago de las pensiones, puesto que ya con las contribuciones que pagamos todos los puertorriqueños al gobierno de Puerto Rico, el Estado está recibiendo suficientes ingresos para asumir la responsabilidad del pago de esas pensiones y no pretender imponerle un cargo adicional a la factura de la luz, que el único propósito que persigue es complacer a los buitres que exigen que se le pague dinero de unas inversiones como si ellos hubiesen hecho la inversión original, cuando la realidad es que la inversión que hicieron es de una ínfima parte de lo que fue el valor de esos bonos cuando fueron emitidos. Y la jueza Taylor Swain ya reconoció que ellos no tienen el derecho que reclaman, y por lo tanto nosotros condenamos lo que esta Junta de Supervisión Fiscal, que como dije al principio, su función principal es garantizarle a estos buitres todopoderosos, muy bien enchufados en el sistema de gobierno norteamericano, con tremendas conexiones en el Congreso y en todas partes donde se toman las decisiones del poder político en Estados Unidos, llevarse una tajada que, si se impone el plan que la Junta pretende que acepte el pueblo puertorriqueño, implicaría que de una deuda que ellos en este momento asumen que es de $5,000 millones, de la forma y manera en que la estructuran, al cabo de 30 años el pueblo de Puerto Rico estaría pagando alrededor de $40,000 millones. Por tal razón, nosotros pues definitivamente nos oponemos estamos condenando esa actitud de la Junta y nuestros trabajadores, principalmente el sector de los jubilados, nos hemos mantenido en la calle dando una lucha, una resistencia que esperamos podamos ampliar su alcance de forma tal que nuestro pueblo haga suya una lucha que es tan importante y que no se permita que se imponga un cargo tan oneroso para el pueblo puertorriqueño en general. Y que la situación, como muy bien señalaba la compañera Yanira, no es distinta a la que se vive en otros pueblos hermanos en nuestra América. Ya muchos de nuestros hermanos latinoamericanos han pasado por esta experiencia, ya fueron y están de vuelta con la imposición en décadas pasadas de políticas neoliberales que los llevaron prácticamente a la ruina total y que las luchas de los pueblos ha logrado a lo largo de las últimas 15, 20 años recuperar sectores del poder en sus países y empiezan a reconstruir una sociedad más justa, con mayor justicia, tanto para el pueblo trabajador como para el pueblo en general. Y en esa nosotros, la experiencia vivida por nuestros hermanos nos indica que no hay de otra, que ese es el camino, que aquí lo que tenemos y lo que podamos tener es el fruto de las luchas que podamos llevar a cabo como trabajadores, como pueblo en general, para defendernos de estos ataques que la clase trabajadora de parte de los buitres, de esa clase burguesa insaciable, que no es que falte curso, es que son insaciables ante el capital.
Gracias, compañero, gracias. Our resistance to U.S. colonialism, imperialism, capitalism isn't just limited to the island. Our diaspora has stood strong and ever present, fighting against all of these isms. Before we go into our panel from the diaspora, just one or two more acknowledgements. I want to acknowledge the presence of our sister Estela Velazquez de la Comunidad Dominicana. She is also a member of the ProLibertad Advisory Board. I want to also acknowledge another advisory board member, also photojournalist for ProLibertad, El Coqui Libre, Ismael Núñez. And I also want to acknowledge ProLibertad volunteer / my fiance / I told him he had to come today, my compañero David, right there. Staffing our table. It wasn't so much that he volunteered as I voluntold him that he was coming to this event to support. Whose debt is this? Whose debt is this? Are we paying this debt?
No.
Are we sacrificing our hospitals, our educational system, retirement, pension, education, healthcare to pay this debt?
No.
Okay. The only way we can make sure that this happens is through unity, through joint action, solidarity, and having a diaspora that is militant and strong. We're working on all of those things. I want to introduce our first panelists from the diaspora. And by the way, Jose and Yanira are staying on. They'll be with us at the end for question and answer. Yanira y Jose se van a quedar para la actividad, para la sección de preguntas y respuestas que vamos a tener, ojalá en 40 minutos. So folks, I want to introduce our first diaspora speaker is Edwin Ortiz of Call to Action on Puerto Rico.
Hello. Call to Action was formed in 2015, and one of the people who formed it was el compañero. One of the people who formed it, se puede ahora. One of the folks who helped found that organization was Francisco Rivera. who's still like sorely missed. You know, we go to meetings and he's like sitting there, you know. Sometimes I see him, sometimes I don't see him. But, you know, you can remember the stuff that he stood for. And he and Lulu Garcia, a lot of you know her too, helped form the organization. And the way we described it then was, we formed in July of 2015, is an integral part of a rebellious, militant, and determined diaspora that understands that the precarious political, social, and economic conditions that confront Puerto Rico is a direct result of its colonial relationship of subordination to the United States. Another way of saying that is, it doesn't matter everything else that's going on. The answer is independence. Sometimes that sounds simplistic, you know, and it takes a little while to like get the message out, right? Because for a lot of our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, statehood sounds so reasonable, you know? And it's not intuitive that statehood is not the answer. It's not, you know? If you talk to a lot of our folks who were born and raised in the United States, and not that they support the policies of the fascist government and all that stuff, but people understand that the way it's most people, not if you're a communist, you know, a communist ally, is to protect and enforce your constitutional rights, right? And you do that because you're a citizen of the United States. So I have had relatives talk to me about that. How could you be for independence? Of course you got to be for statehood. And then we had the conversation about the resources and who's actually protected under the rights, so on and so forth, and why Puerto Rico is not part of the United States, right? It belongs to the United States. And then all of a sudden they think, well, you know, actually, you're right. They might not necessarily be in favor of independence right away, but they understand what statehood actually means. It means, first of all, it's not going to become state unless you get rid of the Puerto Ricans on the island. That's just, you know, Puerto Rico has a vibrant, even with the stuff that's going on today, Puerto Rico has a vibrant culture, presence, and it's a Latin American country. And, you know, a lot of people like keep looking north, but understand that the future is part of the South. South being like, you know, like Venezuela and South America, or some people will call it that. So now just to, you know, that organization came about following a series of big meetings where we would meet in 1199. Just to Velazquez, I love those meetings. Those were great meetings, and we're like really indebted to Estelle and some other folks for all that work. But you know, the way it works sometimes, the meetings get smaller and smaller, you know. And I remember, and getting everybody to agree is like really difficult. I came in as part of New York City Congress of Puerto Rican Rights, because you know the National Congress of Puerto Rican Rights kind of dissolved. So some folks wanted to try and replicate that, but at least with the New York City chapter, right? And so it was a national chapter. So we said, so we put together the New York City chapter of Puerto Rican Rights, a New York City Congress of Puerto Rican Rights. And that was active for a while. And then we started going, and basically in Brooklyn, because almost everybody who formed it was in Brooklyn, in Williamsburg. But then we started going to the meetings in 1199. And while the groups started getting smaller, there were a few groups that stayed and that continued on. And one of them was the Call to Action Puerto Rico. And a lot of that was due to folks like Frank and Lulu, and collaborations with other organizations like ProLibertad through Ben and, you know, some other groups. And so the point was to maintain a rebellious and militant presence in the diaspora, and not just New York City, right? And I think that's a practice also carried out by the Puerto Rican Independence Party in New York. And now there's these other groups that have developed, New York Boricua Resistance, which is a great organization, and want to salute them, and they'll be talking in a little bit. And as Frank used to say, every national liberation movement has always had an active and militant faction in the diaspora, raising money, in some cases buying arms and munitions, like that. That's not necessarily our practice, but you know, I'm sure you could find examples of that in other liberation struggles. And it just doesn't happen unless you get the core support of the diaspora. And in Puerto Rico's case, like in other nations, you know, when you talk about the diaspora, you're talking about a good number of exiles, right? I mean, people who had to leave the island to commit to carry out the struggle. People who had to leave the island for economic reasons. I mean, I know people who just couldn't find work on the island, you know, and they come here. And luckily, they become part of the struggle, right? So from our point of view, it was always about establishing a militant presence in the diaspora, in our case, in New York City, although we were able to connect with people like in Philly and New Jersey. One of the things that we're very proud of is the support that we've given to organizations in Puerto Rico. And this is one of the things that is really important, I think, for the diaspora to do. Two of the most militant groups in Puerto Rico have been the Teachers Federation of Puerto Rico, Federación de Maestros de Puerto Rico. That organization has persevered despite efforts to deunionize workers, and they've just kept at it. And they took part leadership of the struggle to keep schools open, you know, to the best of their ability. And in many cases, the schools, while they could not be maintained open as schools, they succeeded in maintaining them open as community centers. So it's like really important. So we were always very happy to support their trips to the diaspora and to raise money for them. Another group was Se Acabaron las Promesas. And you know, and that's another thing, like that we started knowing them through Frank. You know, Frank knew everybody. And so basically after a couple of calls, we would just connect, and we also helped raise funds for them for their Jornada throughout the diaspora. So those are like two examples of what the diaspora should be doing. One of the things that we did a tradition of is centers around the United Nations activities that take place in June. And not that the UN is the be-all and end-all of international struggle, but it's a really important forum for us to be present at. So, you know, we're one of the people that go in to testify, but we also have, I think this year is going to be our seventh day of solidarity with independence of Puerto Rico, where we invite folks from the island and from groups, some who are going to testify at the UN, others from different UN missions will come to speak. And a lot of you have been to that activity. So we hope to do that here soon. Okay, I'm going to announce that, but that's a good question. June 23rd is going to be our day of solidarity, and it's going to be here. We'll be sending out, we put out a save the date, we'll put it out again after today. One of the things that I'm going to be moving this along. One of the things that happened as a result of that activity, the organization of this group, and it wasn't just our group, us and a few other people ended up doing the call to get people together to start thinking about a campaign that we ended up calling Puerto Rico no se vende. The core reasons for the creation of Call to Action and a lot of other groups was the enactment of Ley Promesa and La Junta, the dictatorial board, the financial board. And the demands ended up being the following. And this is from an old flyer we did, but our demands are the cancellation of the debt. The debt is illegal. It's not that we object to people saying audit the debt. That's fine. We should know we kind of, even though we know who stole the money, it's good to be able to put that in writing somewhere, right? But the cancellation of the debt, because it's illegal and it does not belong to the people of Puerto Rico. Think about it a minute, right? From the 1970s until just a little while ago, the debt that they all talked about was $70 billion that was borrowed. Can you imagine, even after 30 years, even after 40 years, 4 million people having $70 billion? Everybody would have been rich by now. You know, if you're thinking like a capitalist, 4 million people with $70 billion. I mean, everybody would be a rich capitalist by now. But no, that money was used to transfer riches to the colonizers and to the financiers of the colonizers. And the abolishment of Promesa and La Junta. The law was put in by the Democratic Party. Now, locally, there are people who do good stuff because of their activity in local Democratic Party politics, and that's fine. But statewide and nationally, the Democratic Party is not Puerto Rico's friend. It just is not. It was the one that created Promesa, the one that put up La Junta, and they like to think, oh, La Junta, we created it, now it's theirs. No. Nobody in the Congress, there's somebody deciding how that money is going to get spent and who's going to get that money. It just doesn't happen, right? So we need to abolish La Junta, and the abolishment of Act 60, Invest Puerto Rico, Discover Puerto Rico, and all the land grabbing efforts that our compañeros from Puerto Rico had talked about. And ultimately, independence and reparations. Now, and I'm just going to mention an activity that we did yesterday that was carried out by the campaign, which was and there's a press release. We went to the American Museum of Natural History yesterday, and where the Hispanic Federation had its annual gala. And, we were there, greeting all the people in their tuxes and going into the place. But the genesis of that was that the Mirandas, particularly Luis, who have, and you'll read the press release, a lot of good stuff is in there that we have on the table, but epitomizes how the powers that be use our own people to maintain the colony and to reap benefits. Right? All this money gets raised, presumably, also originally it wasn't also about helping Puerto Rico. Now, after the hurricane, we're going to go to Puerto Rico. But originally, all of that stuff was to gain control of Hispanic nonprofits in the United States and to bolster the Democratic Party, right? And through control of various assets, control of community organizations and resources, like Julia de Burgos Center in East Harlem that, luckily El Taller is still very active there, but it stopped being a very active and important place a long time ago because of the Hispanic Federation. But after the hurricanes, they needed somebody to go in and be the front. And that was Luis Miranda and the Hispanic Federation. So they're coming in, giving money away, but they're controlling it. They could just say, look, all you people know how to do this stuff, here's some money, and please let us know how else we can help. They don't. They come in and they control. So that was a great event. We had a bunch of people out there. Right then, the last thing I'm gonna say, right prior to that, we had two sisters confront Luis Miranda at an event at the CUNY grad school, and it was just the two of them, and they got up and just made some quick speeches, and he flew off the wall. I mean, this guy started cursing at them, and they were talking about not just Puerto Rico, but Industrial City, another big thing that his group tried to lobby for on behalf of real estate interests. He started cursing them over that and said, nobody gives a shit about that. That's the mindset of it. So I'm going to end with there. We need a militant organization, cimarrones, militantes. We might not all agree on everything, but we support the right of people to their struggles. We might not necessarily believe that electoral work is going to do it, but a lot of people will get out and como dicen, dar la cara for independence through the Puerto Rican Independence Party, right? So, whatever. So, I don't want to say like whatever works, but the stuff that works. And so, que viva Puerto Rico libre y socialista.
All right, que viva. Before we introduce our last panelists, another acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge the 20 to 22 people that are watching our live stream today. Thank you, People's Forum, for live streaming on YouTube. We have compañeros, compañeras, compañerics online from all over the United States and Puerto Rico watching today. I want to present our final speaker, and after our final speaker, we have one announcement, and then we can go into questions and answers. Questions, not solidarity statements and long speeches. Questions for our panelists in Puerto Rico and live. I want to introduce a compañero, Ed Ventura of Barrio Boricua Resistance. Give it up for Ed.
What's good, y'all? How y'all feeling? Thank all of y'all for coming out and joining us to talk with us and share some space. My name is Ed. I'm part of the New York Boricua Resistance, specifically the expansion of the Barrio Boricua Resistance. We are dedicated to educating, organizing, and mobilizing the diaspora and allies of the diaspora and our people back home for an anti-capitalist, free, fully decolonized Puerto Rico. I'll apologize moving forward. I'm actually a little bit nervous, so if I stumble or mumble, just bear with me a little bit. But I guess just, you know, kind of building off what you were just talking about now. It's really our duty, I feel like, as a big part of the diaspora, to be militant, to organize, to educate, to combat against the who gives a shit, to combat against the Richie Torreses and AOCs. To me, they often feel a lot of times like the sellouts, and these sellouts that come from these neoliberal institutions and serve them ultimately get propped up as like the examples for our young people, especially since like we're combating a genocide. We've had like 3 different genocides on the island, whether that be the Taínos, the whitening and lightening of the Boricua people on the island, and what we're currently facing now, where we're being displaced. From the start, it's like, it's been a forced migration. Pretty much as soon as we were taken into the hands of the United States, from off the rip, the agenda has been pretty much clear, whether that be through exiling independistas, Operation Bootstrap, like served as a guise to industrialize, change the economy, increase social and, you know, financial mobility, when really it's like, how can we take up more land, buy up more shit, ruin more people's lives, to then extract them and bring them here for, you know, cheaper labor, under the idea of that, you know, we coming here for a better life. From the 40s through the 80s, political repression, whether it be through the uprisings of the 50s, through the uprisings in the 70s and 80s, which resulted in 2-3 invasions, which then exiled more people, forcing more people over. And then now, and even from the start, in the 1900s, anytime we get hit with a hurricane, any form of natural, I say natural because really the result of a lot of what we're facing today is willful negligence. It has been willful negligence and active terrorism by the U.S. government, the FBI, and all their affiliates that has ensured that we continue to lose more and more people from the island. The point you're saying, you know, you have to get rid of the people for it to become a state is like extremely true, because when we look at it, in the past decade, Puerto Rico has lost 12% of its population, according to the census, which, you know, that's a rough estimate. It's hard to really believe any numbers they skew, considering the fact that they will continue to lie about the death tolls we face every time we get hit with a hurricane or something. But a lot of our population, a lot of the people end up in Florida, New York, Pennsylvania, Jersey, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Texas, California, Illinois, Ohio. It's sad that we have so many people scattered across so far, widespread across, you know, this big ass, I don't even know what to call this clusterfuck, this fucked up place. But it's also really great if we're thinking strategically of the role of diaspora within the United States and how we can mobilize and organize and how much of a widespread grasp we have. There's no better place to fight against neocolonialism and for our independence and decolonization than here, which is why we you know, it's really our duty, whether it be in our communities fighting against gentrification, assisting and helping whomever we can. You know, in Puerto Rico, about 43 to 44% of people are living in poverty actively right now. In the States, we have about 17% of Puerto Ricans living in poverty right now. Over the pandemic, almost half of our people in the United States and Puerto Rico face some hardship regarding just regular living expenses. And you know, these things happen. It's hard to call them disasters because it's like for them it's something to capitalize and gain on, and it feels very strategic. And when these things happen, they just continue to buy up more land. They just continue to shut down schools, shut down hospitals, shut down libraries, take away pools, take away anything that would ensure someone, you know, any real natural rights or human needs. You know, no electricity, no consistent running water in a lot of places. My fault. But yeah, I guess with that said, the main struggle, I guess, is finding how can we uplift each other, hold our people who have less than here up financially so that we can continue to fight here even harder for our people that are in Puerto Rico right now actively. You know, it's neocolonialism is pushing out our people from our beloved homeland and the neighborhoods we forced here with gentrification. But we have to continue to intensely push back, be militant, be organized, unionized, like completely fight against individualism, hold our people accountable, hold, you know, our family members accountable, stop allowing and really letting our community join the police, join the military, not be active proponents of, you know, U.S. oppression. We faced, you know, colonization. We faced genocide. We faced mass incarceration. We faced the war on drugs, and you know, we still here, and we still gotta fucking fight. You know, I guess I'll speak for myself personally, being a Boricua who grew up in the Bronx, not really having a direct connection to the island, you know, as a kid. You know, my grandmother was the first person who came here. She didn't continue school after she was like 13. So there's a whole load of history that was not an information that I feel like I should have known that was not passed down to me, largely in part due to that, which then has me growing up thinking Puerto Rico was a whole another place and not a community that I'm a part of, and building up a wall and a connection to actually a homeland that is being stripped away from us day by day. We have to fight against that disconnect. We gotta stand together and mobilize for that shit, for the island, for our people here, you know. And yeah, I think that might suffice for what I wanted to say here.
Thank you, Ed. Familia, quick announcement before we transition into question and answer. The ProLibertad literature table there is filled with books, stickers, posters, bumper stickers, postcards. All of that is for all of you. Please make sure that before you leave, some of you probably throughout the years have collected all of this information in these books. Thank you for supporting ProLibertad. Take it for a friend. Take it for a family member. We want that table completely blank. Grab a book or two, grab a sticker or two, grab a poster or two. I also want to remind folks that this Tuesday, July 25th, 2023 is the 125th anniversary of the invasion of Puerto Rico. It is the 125th anniversary of our resistance to U.S. colonialism in Puerto Rico and throughout the diaspora. On that day, there's going to be an activity that's being organized. There is also going to be a calendar of events taking place between June to the end of the year, where there will be different activities taking place. We're going to be reaching out to different organizations, individuals within the Boricua community and outside to provide opportunities to talk about the significance of the 125th anniversary. So be on the lookout. Go to ProLibertad.org for that resistance calendar. It's being put into place with the support of Call to Action on Puerto Rico, New York Boricua Resistance, several individuals, El Frente Socialista, Capítulo de Nueva York. A lot of organizations are coming together to put that resistance calendar together. You can go to ProLibertad.org and see that calendar. It is not up yet, but it will be up very soon. We're also going to be reaching out to other allies and other organizations to add on to that resistance calendar. Now, folks, we are in the section of questions and answers. I also want to give everyone a time check. We are at 2:32. We're going to take questions till about 2:55. I'm going to ask that questions be brief and focused. After this event, Bombayo and a couple of other organizations are coming here to use the space. So again, at 3 o'clock, we need to be disciplined. We need to get up and go into that area over there. If you do not want to participate in the Bombayo activity here, please make sure we use the common area so that they can do what they can do. So we have a question already, compañero Jaime Medina from the PIP.
Muchas gracias a todos por compartir con nosotros en esta tarde. La pregunta mía va dirigida más bien a José y a Yanira, porque ellos hablaron específicamente sobre el proceso de desplazamiento. Esta es la pregunta, de continuar ese proceso y intensificarse como vislumbra, dentro de un periodo de 10 a 15 años, eso sería insostenible, porque el cuadro que ustedes acabaron de presentar es tétrico. Imaginemos que continúe eso y intensifique. Dentro de 10 o 15 años será aún peor. ¿Dará paso esa realidad a que el pueblo se tire a la calle como hicieron en el verano del 19 o seguirán aguantando? Muchas gracias.
Let me quickly respond. As an immigrant, again from El Salvador, I can tell you, I'm going to translate also. Ben, do you want me to translate or to go straight in English?
Both, if you want.
Okay, so voy a empezar por español. Gracias por su pregunta. Como le voy a contestar tanto como residente acá en Puerto Rico y como inmigrante salvadoreña. En mi país, básicamente se volvió por los pasados 30 años un exportador de personas, pero no porque las personas no queríamos ir, sino porque nos forzaron a irnos de nuestro país. Eso ha afectado grandemente no solo la economía, las oportunidades de que el país pueda generar su propia, por sus propias manos, toda la infraestructura necesaria para que las familias que están en este momento puedan vivir de manera digna, pero también para garantizar oportunidades para quienes van a entrar en algún momento a ser parte de la fuerza laboral de una manera digna. Ese es el panorama que estamos viendo a través de Centroamérica, México, los diferentes países, varios países de las Américas. Y el panorama en este momento para nosotros, en esa región a la que me refiero, es extremadamente desoladora, no para decir a 15. Estamos ya en ese punto que es extremadamente difícil encontrar una calidad de vida, por más que se puedan utilizar diferentes campañas mediáticas para pintar algo diferente. Estoy hablando del caso de El Salvador, que ni existe el Estado de Derecho y que igualmente las libertades o el acceso a una calidad de vida es difícil. Descontinuar ese patrón en Puerto Rico también, las posibilidades no son de que se va a quedar con toda la población que tiene la capacidad de poder aportar a su país. Se va a ir y eso significa que básicamente las oportunidades de de crecimiento y desarrollo van a estar en manos de grupos poderosos, grupos de poder, extranjeros muy poderosos, y que las condiciones de vida, como mencionó el compañero José, para quienes son parte de la comunidad envejeciente, nuestras y nuestros adultos mayores, pues que gradualmente vayan a ser poco a poco dejados a morir a su suerte, ¿no? Que no cuenten con la vida digna que se merecen y que básicamente todos los recursos naturales vayan a ser destrozados. En El Salvador ya y toda Centroamérica se considera lo que es el corredor seco. No es porque somos un desierto, es porque gradualmente los gobiernos, diferentes gobiernos han llevado pues las concesiones y los permisos de manera que áreas protegidas donde están los mantos acuíferos vayan escaseando cada vez. Así como dijo también el otro compañero. Voy a responderle en inglés rapidito. I was responding as an immigrant from El Salvador. The situation in El Salvador and other countries in Central America and the Americas, has been very difficult for the past 30 years. At least from the case of my country, the several governments have been interested in exporting people, not because we want to leave, but because we have been forced. That, at the end of the day, impacts the quality of life, the prospect of healthy infrastructure, not only for powerful groups, it's the infrastructure, the quality of life for everyone, but mostly for working families and working people. And at the end of the day, this will have an impact not only on those who are living in Puerto Rico, that they are not going to be able to contribute to Puerto Rico, but for the quality of life of the elders. They're going to be little by little being abandoned and left to die and not to respect their rights. And the last thing, I am the result of public education for me, but the benefits, all of the benefits left are in the hands, were in the hands of the United States. So my tax contributions and all of the fruits of my work stayed in the United States, and that was not supposed to be. That was the destiny I was forced to live. Lo último, compañero, soy el resultado de la educación pública. La educación pública me formó profesionalmente, pero todos los beneficios le quedaron a Estados Unidos, mis contribuciones tributarias, mi fuerza laboral. Esta edad que tengo, si soy deportada o si me llevan de nuevo a El Salvador, no tengo mayores contribuciones que he aportado a mi país. Así que es un panorama desolador si no seguimos en la lucha. But if it's a very uncertain future, if we don't fight, but the idea is to continue to fight, not to let that happen.
Sí, yo quisiera. ¿Me escucha? Hola.
Te oímos.
¿Me escuchan? ¿Me escuchan, Benjamín?
Sí.
Sí, yo quisiera añadir a lo que ha expresado la compañera Yanira, que nosotros seguimos apostando a que con un trabajo consecuente de educación, nuestro pueblo va a entender en algún momento dado su situación y lo va a comprender de forma tal que va a tener que tomar acción, porque no hay de otra. Si los pronósticos, estudiosos del plan de reestructuración de la deuda del gobierno de Puerto Rico, una serie de economistas, varios, han señalado que es un plan tan defectuoso y tan cargado a favor de esos grandes intereses que el periodo de tiempo del que habla el compañero de 10 a 15 años es mucho más de lo que se va a necesitar para que haya una segunda declaración de quiebra. Estamos hablando de probablemente en los próximos 8, como mucho 10 años, donde el hecho de de que la disminución en la población y que son los sectores productivos los que emigran, va a hacer que el Estado no tenga los recursos necesarios para poder cumplir con la enorme responsabilidad de pagar esa deuda que, como bien señalaba el compañero Ortiz, creo que fue, que indicó que es una deuda que ciertamente no le pertenece al pueblo de Puerto Rico, es una deuda de una situación que la provoca el Estado colonial del país y que es la metrópoli la responsable de dicha deuda. La imposición sobre los hombros del pueblo puertorriqueño del pago de esa deuda implicará que no se va a poder cumplir con la misma y que en un periodo tan corto como el que le acabo de señalar, probablemente estemos en una situación similar a la que estamos viviendo hoy y que la Junta señala que ya ha superado. Eso creemos que no es así y que ciertamente va a haber una explosión en algún momento dado, porque no hay de otra, ¿no? O sea, los pueblos una vez están contra la pared, no tienen para dónde ir, no le queda más remedio que tirar para adelante.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias. We have another question right here.
Good afternoon. My name is Adriano Kendo. I want to thank everyone for coming here and having this amazing conversation. Mi pregunta es más para José Rivera, y tengo otra para el panel entero. Especialmente en su rol en cuanto a la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica. Obviamente, especialmente en Puerto Rico, the role of la prensa, es bien importante en cuanto al control sociopolítico y la legitimación de este abuso colonial. ¿Cuál ha sido el reto mayor en cuanto al intento de deslegitimar el rendimiento y el manejo de la Autoridad de Energía Eléctrica para poner en camino la privatización? Y usted mencionó, señor Edwin, un poco más de esto en cuanto a la cultura. Me encantaría tener un poco más de conversación en cuanto al rol de la cultura como resistencia, una de las resistencias primordiales de Puerto Rico y del puertorriqueño en cuanto, no solamente en Puerto Rico, pero en la diáspora, para resistir la hegemonía estadounidense.
Sí, con respecto al rol de la prensa, pues los dueños de la prensa son inversionistas. Ya tienen su dinero lo invierten donde pueden obtener mayores ganancias. Así que Puerto Rico, los principales medios de prensa están controlados por una familia, la familia Ferrer Rangel, los locales, y obviamente el control que se ejerce desde los principales centros mediáticos de Estados Unidos. Así que la pregunta se contesta sola. Han actuado para justificar la privatización, fueron clave en demonizar a los trabajadores, vendiéndole unas ideas al pueblo de que no trabajaban, de que cobraban muchísimo dinero y que al presente todavía eso está vigente en la mente de muchísima gente en el país, cuando la realidad le está dando en las narices de que vinieron unas compañías que le han aumentado en muy poco tiempo 7 veces la factura de energía eléctrica, donde una serie de individuos están obteniendo ingresos superiores al $500,000. El salario máximo que ocupó el director ejecutivo de la Autoridad de Puerto Rico, puertorriqueño, que dedicó toda su vida a trabajar para el país desde la empresa, fueron $240,000. Ahora eso le pagan a un supervisor de segunda categoría que viene de Estados Unidos a trabajar en el sistema eléctrico. Así que ese rol de la prensa pues responde obviamente a los intereses de la clase que representa y fue factor clave para venderle la falsa idea al pueblo puertorriqueño de que con la privatización iban a tener un mejor sistema eléctrico, que iban a tener inclusive la posibilidad de que fueran varias compañías que pudieran escoger el que le vendiera la energía eléctrica más barata. Con respecto a la preocupación, al señalamiento sobre la cultura, hay algo que nosotros planteamos cuando se toca este tema, porque se cuestiona el que cumpliéndose ya 125 años de que somos una colonia norteamericana, seguimos siendo colonia y que el pueblo puertorriqueño no ha logrado su independencia. Entonces, yo creo que la pregunta no es esa, la pregunta es cómo un imperio tan poderoso, el más poderoso que ha conocido la humanidad, ha intentado durante 125 años tragarse una pequeña nación caribeña, y esa nación caribeña todavía seguimos siendo puertorriqueños y seguiremos siendo, porque no hay forma de que por más poderoso que sea ese imperio se pueda tragar a esta isla, a este pequeño archipiélago del cual los puertorriqueños constituimos algo así como un huesito que tienen atravesado ahí en la garganta, que no se lo pueden tragar y que eventualmente van a tener que echarlo por fuera. Y eso es obra de la cultura. Como bien señaló Benjamín, creo que fue, la cultura nos define claramente como un pueblo latinoamericano y caribeño. Y no hay manera de que una nación se pueda tragar a otra nación que tiene bien claras sus raíces y que las vive plenamente. Nosotros hemos llevado la cultura nuestra a los Estados Unidos. Muchos puertorriqueños hemos tenido que ir a vivir al continente, pero nos hemos llevado a Puerto Rico con nosotros y lo estamos viviendo allá en su tierra.
Gracias, José.
Yeah, I'll be brief. The way how culture factors into it. Culture has always been the main bulwark against colonialism. I mean, not that people don't suffer and the abuse doesn't happen, but remember what happened when they tried to get rid of the language, right? So how do you get rid of culture? You get rid of the language. You make everybody speak English all of the time, and that just doesn't work. It just never happened. A, because people actively resisted it, you know, it was, and B, just people in Puerto Rico don't dream in English. They don't dream in English. I lived there for a while, and I had to learn that. Sorry. Ahora, luckily now I dream in both English and Spanish, so I'm very happy about that. But the other part of the culture, and I'm going to finish with this, is that it all evolves, right? And I'm not necessarily the best person to talk about this stuff. But one of the big things that is happening in the struggle for independence of Puerto Rico and for the people is the rise of the gay and lesbian I'm sorry, I don't know how to say the whole thing. But if you looked at the protests that were taking place in Puerto Rico, who was it that took over the Calle La Fortaleza? It was the young people. And it was in all facets. Trans folks. It was just amazing, you know, and they were talking about how terrible it is. They took it over, you know, and they were very peaceful they were loud, and they were out and they were out and loud, but they were there, you know, and they put a lot of the old folks, traditional activists to shame. And that's what's growing. And that's you know, that's something that people are going to have to like adjust to. But the leadership is going to be much more diverse than it has been for a long, long time.
Thank you, Ed. We're going to take 2 questions. Make sure our questions are brief and that our responses are brief. Gracias.
¿Puedo aguantarlo? I was going to ask my question in Spanish, but in accordance with the question I'm going to ask it in English. Having been born and grew up in the United States, for me, it's very clear that the United States is a master of co-optation and usurpation. And while it's true that Puerto Ricans continue to, as you put it, dream in Spanish, their dreams have been highly co-opted by the United States. And where I'm getting with this is, I don't understand why at this juncture, knowing everything we know, we haven't simply declared independence and said, fuck you, the United States, that it deserves, clearly, you know? I'm saying that because right now we have this move for a plebiscite, so-called another plebiscite, where they're excluding Estado Libre Asociado, But the way it's being articulated, I have no faith in AOC, as she calls herself. She seems to be an opportunist lawyer, a politician. The only way to avert that, because in the United States, everything is co-opted, is for Puerto Ricans simply to say, we are independent, have a Congreso Constituyente, and just say, fuck it. We are independent country. Right now, it looks like we're recognizing this, recognizing that, but we're allowing the force of political change to escape through our fingers. We're not grabbing onto it. We're not assuming the mantle of being the persons articulating it. When are we going to simply declare independence? That's what it comes down to, period. It's my question, You want to go ahead? Okay. It's a good question, and there's no good answer to it, right? But one of the things that is encouraging, and unfortunately it's part of the dislocation that's taking place, right? The political situation in Puerto Rico is breaking down in terms of electoral politics. More and more people are shifting away from it. And people who are, though, still willing to use electoral politics as their thing are moving toward El PIB. I mean, and the other group, Victoria Ciudadana, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend them, but there's stuff happening. I don't know when but it's also not happening in the sense that a lot of us would recognize, I think.
I would. I would also offer I feel like a large proponent of the reason of why what you're talking about hasn't exactly happened is because the people who have done that probably have been persecuted, incarcerated, murdered, tortured, made an example of, imprisoned for 20 to 30 years. And then, the propaganda that has been pushed in the education there, not even the education, but just specifically the idea that we would starve if we were independent without the United States, which is completely bullshit. But it's so I guess I'll use the Dominican Republic as an example. When a cultural thing like the dictatorship of Trujillo happens, once he gets murdered and thrown away, the re-education and the complete destruction of the anti-blackness that is so seeped within Dominican culture doesn't really disappear, because it's something that gets literally psychologically imbued and beat into people for generations, which then becomes a harder thing to manage, especially when we're being hit with hurricanes, a bullshit illegal debt, people being displaced, financial crises. Not to say that even though conditions like that are what make revolution inevitable, which is why I will never withhold faith or will never waver that will happen, because it will fucking happen sooner or later. Exactly what you're talking about will happen, because we have the people. It's more so about, I think, currently meeting everyone's material conditions and needs at the moment, and holding each other down to then firmly stand within that and continue to move that. But there's definitely people still doing the work, and it is going to happen. I know in my heart and my soul, I don't give a fuck.
Quickly, I want to say that there are examples that people is fighting for independence. Don Rafael Cancel Miranda, he often said that he was never in prison. He was always free, free the mind, free the soul. And that's what we need to make sure that we elevate all of the community projects and the leadership that is within the community and within the Puerto Rican resistance in the island and outside the island, because just like the neoliberals are very effective in spreading their narrative and using the media to continue to keep their system alive, we need to make sure that we elevate and we amplify what different groups are doing in Puerto Rico and outside Puerto Rico towards independence, but defending as well those local projects and programs that are led by the resistance, by Puerto Ricans resisting the colonialism.
All right, folks,
Sí,
we're gonna...
si me permite un minutito.
Okay.
Para referirme al cuestionamiento que hace el compañero, ¿por qué no declaramos la independencia y punto? Y ya somos independientes. El único territorio en nuestra América que logró hacer eso es el pueblo de Cuba. Y lleva 60 y tantos años bloqueado. Ha tenido que moler vidrio con el pecho, como decimos por acá nosotros. O sea, no es tan fácil decirlo como hacerlo. La lucha sigue, cada pueblo tiene que desarrollar, tiene derecho a todos los métodos de lucha y tiene que desarrollar su estrategia única, será la que la conduzca a poder lograr esa independencia y poder ejercer su plena soberanía. Eso no es un acto que se decreta, se construye.
All right, brothers and sisters, we're going to take 2 quick questions from Estela and one from our compañero Bicho from New York Boricua Resistance, and then we're going to be wrapping up. Please, folks, brief answers.
Una pregunta bien breve dirigida al compañero José. ¿Diría usted, José, que hay un paralelo histórico en lo que está sucediendo con Promesa, la Junta Fiscal, y lo que pasamos en América Latina bajo el Fondo Monetario Internacional y el Banco Mundial, que también creó resistencia? Y si podría exponer un poco más cuáles son los paralelos. Y yo diría como Karl Marx, la historia no se repite, y si se repite es una farsa.
No se repite, son procesos. Son procesos que se van desarrollando y se desarrollan en unos lugares primero y en otros después, pero sí, ciertamente son paralelos y responden a la etapa en que se encuentra la lucha en los distintos países. Lo que estamos viendo en Francia, los trabajadores, los obreros en las calles, luchando por unos derechos. Estamos en una etapa, la etapa superior como bien señalaba Lenin, el imperialismo, la fase superior del capitalismo. Y es interesante cómo en esta etapa vemos esas luchas que se están dando a lo largo, alrededor nuestro y a lo largo del mundo entero, ¿no? Y el sistema capitalista está seriamente amenazado y está en una etapa, es un tigre lanzando salpazos en todas direcciones para tratar de sobrevivir.
Bicho?
Thank you, everybody, for your stuff that you talked about. Ed, you spoke in the beginning of your part of the panel about statehood and how it's within all of us as Puerto Ricans, like the desire for independence, but we're taught that statehood is the answer. There's a lot of myths that people speak about statehood. I was wondering what your perspective was on the myth that statehood would allow Puerto Rico to be put in a better economic position.
Yeah. Well, if you look, one obvious thing is look at the economic position of Puerto Ricans in the United States now, and people who are born. It's not the best, and it's not like everybody that statehood, being a United States citizen, has made all Puerto Ricans millionaires, right? So now, there are people who came in my parents' generation in the 40s. They came. A lot of them were able to find decent jobs that were available. My father became a jeweler in the diamond district, but not working in the stores, right, out front. There were all of these Puerto Ricans, and that has since changed to different folks in the buildings where there were all of the workshops where everybody did all of the work, right? But that doesn't happen all the time, and it's not going to happen now. Statehood, being a state, by just being able to move to New York City without a passport doesn't help you at all if you don't have a good paying job. And that's within the capitalist system, right? So that is a myth. And a lot of people came here after, and I just talked about, because I'm in the social services field. A lot of people came over after Maria you know, and people were putting together these forums. We're gonna put together. We're gonna find housing, and no. There's no housing for people here now, right? So whoever came after Maria looking for housing, they were stuck in shelters for the homeless. So yeah, it's a myth. There's no, and people find that out once they get here. There's a difference for some people who moved to Miami. A lot of those statehooders who moved from Puerto Rico into Miami, who already had connections, you know, and are doing better, you know, and now voting conservative, Democrat and Republican. It blows my mind. Anyway.
Right along with the gusanos.
Yeah.
All right, familia. Again, thank you for coming out today. Muchísimas gracias a nuestro panel de Puerto Rico. Dale un aplauso, por favor. Ed and Ed are going to be available for conversation, discussion, and follow-up over there in that area there. Everyone, please stand up and make your way that way. All right, folks? To respecting the space. And folks, if you want to stick around, I believe Bombayo is doing an activity. They're going to be downstairs. There's another activity taking place in this space. So if you want some good Boricua culture, go downstairs, Bombayo.